Sean Stockman has more than 814,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel alone.
It is really impressive, and on it you will find Sean helping people in Detroit do things like clean up their yards and clear overgrown trees and bushes.
Sean Stockman did something most people only fantasize about doing. After spending nearly 20 years inside a stable corporate career, he walked away from the safety of paychecks, titles, and routine, and drove into one of America's most struggling cities with nothing more than lawn equipment, a camera, and a belief that helping strangers mattered. What began as one spontaneous cleanup outside an abandoned preschool slowly transformed into a mission that would change thousands of lives. But behind the viral before and after videos is a far more complicated story, one filled with fear, exhaustion, danger, emotional weight, and the quiet cost of becoming the person people pray will arrive. The corporate life that was quietly breaking him. For almost 2 decades, Sean Stockman lived the kind of life many people are taught to chase. He worked in Michigan's automotive industry, earning a steady paycheck and building a career that looked successful from the outside. He had responsibilities, experience, and a professional path that made sense on paper. He was married young, started a family young, and did what millions of people do every day. He kept showing up. But the deeper truth was much harder to explain. Sean never fully felt like he belonged in that world. Even after years of proving himself, he carried a constant sense of imposter syndrome. Every promotion, every accomplishment, every year of experience somehow failed to silence the voice in his head, asking whether he was actually good enough. That internal struggle slowly changed the way he moved through life. The excitement he once felt about work faded. The energy disappeared. He still performed his duties, but the spark that once drove him had quietly drained away. He wasn't collapsing dramatically or spiraling publicly. He was simply fading, and from the outside, that kind of fading can look almost invisible. It looks like someone doing the minimum required to get through the week. It looks like a person who suddenly comes alive on weekends and grows distant Monday morning. It looks like existing inside routines that no longer feel connected to who you actually are. Before the automotive industry, Sean had worked as a video editor, filming and editing wedding videos. He spent years documenting some of the happiest moments in other people's lives, while his own life increasingly felt emotionally flat. The creativity he once enjoyed slowly became boxed in by schedules, responsibilities, and the exhausting predictability of corporate structure. What makes Sean's story unusual is that the people around him noticed. His bosses watched the difference between the employee they saw during office hours and the creative person they saw outside of work. They noticed the passion that emerged whenever he worked on independent projects. They noticed the gap between obligation and purpose. And instead of punishing him for losing motivation, they did something unexpected. They pulled him aside and told him the truth. They told him he clearly had something more inside him. They encouraged him to pursue it. For many people, hearing something like that from authority figures would feel terrifying. A corporate boss telling you to follow your passion can sound dangerously close to hearing that your future inside the company has already expired. But for Sean, that conversation cracked something open. He had spent years waiting for confidence to come from within. Instead, validation came from the outside. People around him recognized that the version of Sean trapped inside office walls was not the fullest version of who he could become. That realization did not instantly transform his life overnight. He did not quit the next morning and magically reinvent himself. But once someone tells you that your life could be bigger than the box you are living in, it becomes very difficult to unhear it. The creative energy that had been suffocating for years started looking for somewhere to go. At the time, Sean had no idea that the answer would eventually involve Detroit, abandoned properties, lawn equipment, and complete strangers. And he definitely did not know that one random afternoon would redirect the entire course of his life. The abandoned preschool that changed everything. Most people see abandoned places every day without truly looking at them. A collapsing building, an overgrown lot, a forgotten corner of a struggling neighborhood. Most drivers register a quick moment of sadness before continuing on with their day. Sean Stockman pulled over. He was 41 years old when he passed the abandoned preschool that would ultimately change everything. That detail matters, because 41 is not usually the age people associate with dramatic reinvention. By that stage of life, most people believe their major choices have already been made. Sean saw something different. The preschool property was swallowed by weeds and neglect. Grass climbed over sidewalks. Overgrowth covered spaces where children once played. It looked abandoned, not just physically, but emotionally, like a place everyone had stopped believing was worth saving. Something about that sight stayed with him. So instead of driving away, he parked the car, walked onto the property, and started pulling weeds with his bare hands. There was no audience, no camera setup, no business plan, no expectation that this moment would become anything larger than one man cleaning one forgotten place. But that single decision triggered something powerful. Sean realized how impossible it suddenly felt to ignore visible suffering once he had actually stopped long enough to face it. One cleanup turned into another, then another. Eventually, he created a YouTube channel documenting the transformations. That channel became Midlife Stockman. Over time, millions of people watched. The internet fell in love with the dramatic before and after visuals. Lawns transformed from waist-high weeds into clean, open spaces. But the emotional reason people connected to the channel ran much deeper than landscaping. Sean represented something many viewers secretly crave. He was someone who stopped waiting for permission to help. The decision to leave corporate life behind and pursue the work full-time, however, was far more frightening than the inspirational version of the story usually admits. Sean had never been self-employed before. For nearly 20 years, his adult life had operated within structure, schedules, salaries, performance reviews, expectations, routines. Suddenly, all of that disappeared. No guaranteed paycheck, no stable title, no certainty, only risk. He has described the leap honestly in interviews and videos. It was not exciting every day. It was terrifying. The role his wife, Tessa, played during that period cannot be overstated. Support sounds simple in hindsight, but genuine support means believing in someone while the future still looks uncertain. Tessa backed Sean when the entire mission was still just an idea fueled by faith and lawn equipment. That foundation mattered because the work itself quickly became far more difficult than social media viewers fully understood. Detroit was not simply a backdrop for satisfying cleanup videos. It was a city carrying decades of abandonment, distrust, economic collapse, and broken promises. And when strangers suddenly arrive offering free help, not everyone assumes good intentions. Sean would learn that lesson the hard way. The danger nobody sees on camera. Watching Midlife Stockman videos can feel strangely calming. Viewers see overgrown properties transformed into clean, safe spaces through hard physical work. The videos often carry uplifting music, grateful homeowners, and satisfying visual payoffs. But what the camera only partially captures is the danger. Sean quickly discovered that working alone in struggling neighborhoods comes with serious risks, both physical and emotional. Neighbors have confronted him aggressively while he worked. Police have been called on him while he was actively helping people who invited him there. Strangers have accused him of trespassing, questioned his motives, and treated his presence with suspicion. At first glance, that reaction might seem unfair. But Detroit has experienced decades of disappointment from outsiders arriving with promises, projects, cameras, or agendas. In neighborhoods shaped by abandonment and broken trust, even generosity can look suspicious. Sean learned that reality in real time. One incident became especially memorable. While performing a cleanup, tensions escalated badly enough that police officers reportedly had to intervene physically during the situation. Imagine standing in 90-degree heat, covered in dirt and sweat, after hours of helping someone for free, only to suddenly find yourself explaining to law enforcement why you were there. Moments like that reveal how emotionally complicated this work really is. Sean has handled those confrontations with remarkable patience. In one video, he calmly explains to viewers that a nearby resident is trying repeatedly to report him while he continues cleaning a property the city had requested he work on. That calmness is not effortless. It is learned, and it comes from understanding something difficult about human nature. People who have been ignored long enough often struggle to trust kindness immediately. The same neighborhoods Sean wants to help are neighborhoods conditioned to expect disappointment, but the emotional confrontations are only part of the burden. The physical demands are brutal. Sean routinely spends entire days performing exhausting manual labor under extreme heat conditions. Some cleanups stretch across multiple days, requiring endless lifting, digging, trimming, hauling debris, and operating heavy equipment. This is not symbolic work. It is physically punishing labor, property after property, week after week, month after month. And then came one particular moment that shook him deeply. Sean later described it publicly as his closest call yet. He had been alone on a property during what should have been a routine cleanup when something happened that left him visibly rattled afterward. He admitted the situation could have dramatically changed his life. The details mattered less than the emotional reality behind them. For the first time, viewers saw how thin the line could become between meaningful service and genuine danger. Yet perhaps the most revealing part of the story is what happened next. Sean returned to work. The following day, he was back outside cleaning another property. That decision says something profound about the kind of mission this has become for him, because Midlife Stockman is no longer simply a YouTube channel. For Sean, it has become a responsibility, and responsibilities are hard to walk away from once real people begin depending on you. The faces he cannot forget. Behind every transformation Sean Stockman uploads to the internet is a human story far heavier than the grass being cut or the debris being cleared away. Viewers may come for the satisfying before and after visuals, but what often stays with them are the people standing behind those overgrown yards. Sean's work has never really been about landscaping. It has been about showing up for people who feel forgotten. And over time, those encounters have become the emotional center of everything he does. One woman in Detroit completely broke down when Sean arrived at her property. Through tears, she admitted she had been praying for someone to help her. That sentence says more about the reality of these neighborhoods than any statistic ever could. Imagine sitting inside your home every day, staring at a problem you physically, financially, or emotionally cannot solve anymore, not wanting luxury or perfection, just hoping somebody notices you are struggling. Then one day, a stranger actually shows up with tools and offers help for free. For many homeowners Sean meets, that moment feels almost unreal. Stories like that have followed him throughout Detroit. There was Linda, a 58-year-old woman living with cerebral palsy and hearing difficulties. Her property had become impossible for her to manage on her own. The overgrowth surrounding her home was not the result of laziness or neglect. It was the result of circumstance, slowly becoming overwhelming. Sean received an email about her situation and decided to help. He spent days restoring the property, clearing the yard and making the space livable again. But what he really restored was something less visible: dignity. The ability to walk outside your own home without feeling ashamed or defeated matters more than people realize. Another cleanup involved a single mother whose yard had become dangerous for her children. The grass and debris had grown so badly that the space was no longer safe for kids to play in. Sean transformed the property into a clean, open yard where those children could finally run around again. He also helped a struggling veteran whose life had become buried beneath years of hardship. Sean handled the cleanup quietly and respectfully, never turning the man's struggles into spectacle or entertainment. Then there was a woman named Aaron who initially thought Sean was knocking on her door to sell cable television. When she realized he was actually offering to clean her property for free, her expression completely changed. "I've been waiting for this day," she told him. That reaction reveals something heartbreaking about the community Sean works in. Most people are not asking for miracles. They are simply hoping somebody notices them. What makes Sean's work emotionally exhausting is that he truly does notice. Every conversation stays with him. Every struggling homeowner, every elderly resident trapped behind overgrown yards, every family holding things together by the smallest margin imaginable. While viewers experience these transformations through a screen, Sean experiences them face to face. He hears the stories directly. He watches people cry. He steps into homes and neighborhoods carrying years of hardship and neglect. Over time, that emotional weight accumulates. Cleaning one property may feel manageable, but hundreds of them become something heavier. Sean eventually realized there are limits to what he can truly fix. He can clean a yard, remove debris, and restore a property's appearance, but he cannot erase the poverty, illness, grief, or instability that created those situations in the first place. That painful reality became especially clear during one unforgettable cleanup involving a house so deteriorated it was nearly condemned, and a family was still living inside. The cost of becoming the person people pray for. Of all the properties Sean Stockman has cleaned and documented throughout Detroit, one home stands apart from the rest. Not because the transformation itself was especially satisfying to watch, and not because the cleanup created one of those dramatic before and after moments the internet loves to share. This house stood out because of what it revealed about the limits of what one person can realistically change, no matter how much effort or compassion they bring with them. The home was dangerously close to condemnation. The structure had deteriorated so badly that it was nearing the point of being declared unsafe for people to live in. And yet, despite the broken condition of the property, a family was still living inside. That detail alone says something deeply uncomfortable about modern America. People do not stay inside homes like that because they want to. They stay because they often have nowhere else to go. For many struggling families, survival means learning to live inside conditions that most people would never even imagine tolerating. Sean chose to document the property honestly. not to exploit the family or create viral misery for views, but because part of his mission has become forcing people outside these neighborhoods to confront realities they rarely see. His videos may begin with overgrown lawns and abandoned-looking properties, but underneath those visuals are stories about illness, poverty, exhaustion, aging, and years of neglect piling up on top of one another until even the most basic upkeep becomes impossible. At some point, a home stops reflecting laziness or irresponsibility and starts reflecting the emotional weight being carried inside it. The footage from that property made one thing painfully clear. Sometimes people are simply overwhelmed. Not because they stopped caring, but because life slowly buried them under problems too large to solve alone. Sean cleaned the property. He worked for hours in the heat, cleared debris, cut the grass, and made the outside of the home look cared for again. But even he openly acknowledged the painful truth underneath the transformation. A clean yard cannot solve structural poverty. It cannot erase years of medical hardship. It cannot repair emotional exhaustion or undo decades of being failed by systems that were supposed to help long before a YouTuber arrived carrying lawn equipment. That realization is part of what makes Sean's work emotionally difficult. He understands the limits of his own role. He can help. He can provide relief. He can restore dignity and make life feel manageable again, at least for a little while. But he cannot save everyone. And perhaps that is the hidden heartbreak behind the entire Midlife Stockman story. From the outside, the channel looks like a massive success. Nearly 1 million subscribers, millions of views, sponsorships, ad revenue, Patreon supporters, merchandise, and partnerships with equipment companies that help fund the work. Sean has built something sustainable enough to continue offering free cleanups to people who genuinely need help. But success also comes with pressure most viewers never fully think about. The internet rewards consistency. Viewers expect emotional payoff. The algorithm constantly demands another story, another transformation, another reason for people to click. At the same time, struggling homeowners continue reaching out for help. Every email, every message, and every request represents another real human situation Sean must emotionally absorb. Over time, that weight accumulates. Sean once ran marathons regularly. He has admitted he has not run one in years. In many ways, he simply traded one endurance challenge for another. Now the miles are measured differently. In properties cleaned, people helped, emotional encounters carried home at the end of the day, and years spent listening to stories most people never hear. The name Midlife Stockman suddenly feels far more meaningful in that context. What started as a midlife reinvention slowly evolved into a mission, but missions demand sacrifice. And Sean's greatest challenge may not be the physical labor, or even the dangerous neighborhoods. It may be learning how to continue helping others without completely draining himself in the process. Because at the center of this story sits one difficult truth. One person cannot answer every prayer. Somewhere in Detroit right now, another elderly homeowner is staring out a window at a yard they cannot manage anymore. Another veteran is quietly overwhelmed. Another struggling family is trying to hold things together inside a home falling apart around them. Sean Stockman showed millions of people what it looks like when someone actually stops and helps. But in doing so, he also revealed something much bigger. Just how many people are still waiting, still hoping, and still praying the truck turns down their street next. Outro. Sean Stockman's story is inspiring, but it is also deeply human. Behind every viral transformation video is a man who walked away from certainty and stepped into a life filled with physical exhaustion, emotional weight, and real danger. He traded comfort for purpose, and in doing so, became the person strangers pray will show up at their door. What makes his work powerful is not just the cleanups themselves, but the reminder that kindness still matters in places many people have stopped paying attention to. Sean cannot fix every problem in Detroit, and even he knows that. But every property he transforms sends a message to someone who feels invisible. you still matter. That message may be the most important thing he leaves behind. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more powerful stories about people quietly changing lives one day at a time.